And so and there was a huge uproar in America because they thought it was like a slap on the face. And actually, Mark Twain was a friend of these kids, and he was actually trying to lobby with Ulysses Grant, who knew Lee from when they were fighting the Taiping, and trying to get the kids to stay, but then they couldn't. So when they left, actually, the New York Times wrote a very strong piece against the Chinese government. And so this is, in 1881, this is from the New York Times editorial. This is an emphatic denial of the enthusiastic assertions that China has entered upon the pathway of progress pursued by other nations, and that there is for her no turning back. China cannot borrow our learning, our science, and our material forms of industry without importing with them the virus of political rebellion. Therefore, she will have none of these things. But anyway, so they went back, but subsequently the modernization or the complete the development of China were these 94 kids. A few of them died. Some of them actually escaped and didn't go back to China. Of the 94, 24 became diplomats, 14 naval generals, 3 minister of foreign affairs, 1 prime minister, Tang Shaoyi, 1 what is now Tianjin University, the first headmaster, Cai Shaoji, and then 1 the first Tsinghua University president, Tang Guoan, and then obviously Zhang Tianyou, the father of railroads. These are all this group, of these 94 kids. So a lot of them actually went back to go back to China, get to work in different departments within the modernized departments. But then a lot of them actually went back to complete their studies, and then. Obviously, another topic would be going for naval, like studying Navy, and then there was because the students from in Fujian were then sent to the manufacturing, the shipping manufacturing. They learned from the French, and then they learned the driving, being a captain. They learned in Britain. They went to Greenwich Naval Royal Navy College. And that I don't talk about this time because all the Navy stuff I'll wait till the Sino-Japanese War. And so I'll leave that for blank. And then the next topic would be development of new technologies or industries. The first one is railroads. Railroads, obviously, even up to today, is one of the most modern forms of communication. Li Hongzhang already wanted to build railroads in 1874, and then he was trying to get the approval. Prince Gong said, I can't say it. And you know what? Even the Empress Dowagers would not be able to get it done. So you can think of it, a lot of people have a weird, the common perception is that Cixi, the Empress Dowager, had absolute power and that she was against all forms of modernization. But if you study, and most of the time because history wants to vilify her, but then if you actually study closely of the Empress Dowager, probably the most important person in the late Qing period, she actually was in most of the sense in the forefront of modernization, and also in a lot of cases she had not enough power. Like she most of the time she was balancing. She knew she had to use these guys because because that's where the military power is, and then also because they know how to consolidate the power of the Qing Dynasty. But at the same time, she was scared of these guys. So she created, actually, in some sense, she allowed these old, close-minded officials. There was this society called Qingliu, or you translate into clear water. So these guys think of themselves as substantially high in terms of morality. And they would always write things, write documents, and be public with the moral corruption of these open-minded officials, and how learning from the West is nothing more than just learning from animals.
And so do they sort of function as like the eunuchs of old, or
not eunuchs? The eunuchs were around, no, but they weren't eunuchs. These are top officials.
No, I know, but I mean, I didn't know if the eunuchs were still around, or if they had sort of replaced them in terms of their role, that they were always whispering in her ear and telling her.
Oh, this is not whispering. This is actually, it's allowed them to be public with the criticism, because that's the way she uses public criticism to balance the power of these guys with real power and administrative power. So, and this is something very important when you study Chinese history, and actually any history. The most important thing is this: the incentives of the people may not correlate with the incentives of the regime. And so that's obvious. But I think more importantly, in different cases, if you study Chinese politics or history, is that the incentives of the regime are sometimes at odds with the incentives of the head of the regime. So in this case, to reform is the right thing to do. But Cixi must balance the power. So in some sense, you could see that the incentives of the top of the regime and the regime are not consistent. And this is one of the key times. So in 1874, Li Hongzhang already wanted to build railroads. Jardine actually built an unauthorized railroad in Shanghai. And then one guy got killed. Like when he was just looking, I think he was just standing right in front, and yet they didn't know any better. So when that happened, there was a huge uproar that, see, we know that this, the sound and all that, it's making the ancestors angry. That's why the ancestors allowed this accident to happen. But mostly, like everything else in China, it's about land. Building railroads require land, and so it really touched upon the special interests of the local elites, and also because of the sound. Actually, in some sense, they were kind of right. Like having railroads close to you is not that good, like environmentally, and so they had a point. So bad feng shui. So one other thing is bad feng shui, and a lot of times it's right next to the ancestral homes, like ancestral burial grounds, and it's really bad. Like you're waking up the ancestors. That's why that guy died. And so in 1876, the governor of the Shanghai region, a guy called Shen Baozheng, negotiated with a guy called Sheng Qianhai, which I'll get into later. Sheng Qianhai was the first real businessman / politician in China. But then they did a negotiation with Jardine, bought the railroad for 285,000 taels of silver from Jardine, and destroyed it. So yes, it's very sad. And then in 1880,
I'm sorry. How big was this? I mean, it was in Shanghai, but
it's about like a 25, like 25 kilometers, something like that. So very short. And then in 1880, the guy called Liu Mingchuan, he was a general of Li Hongzhang. Liu Mingchuan would then be the first governor of Taiwan after the Sino-French War, which I'll get into later. But he met with the Empress Dowager and said that we must build railroads. Li used Liu Mingchuan to do it because he is too high up. So he tried to get the message from Empress Dowager, and then Empress Dowager in principle said okay, and then Li then wrote an official document to the Empress Dowager for the building of the railroads, and when that happened, there's huge uproar. And so even the Empress Dowager could not get it done. And so so Li nonetheless built railroads, but then in the beginning they couldn't have the train head, so they used donkeys, because of public opinion. So the first railroads built in China, not counting the one in Jardine, was actually dragged by donkeys. So that's 1881. And by 1888, actually, the French actually paid some money for Li to build a short railroad around Zhongnanhai, which is actually where the leaders of China live today, even, and allowed Empress Dowager to try. She liked it, apart from the fact that she had to look at the back of the drive. Other than that, she was actually fine. So they started building in 1888, mostly from the coal mine in Tangshan, where the huge earthquake happened. In 1886, in 1976, and then, so that was 14 years from the day when Li Hongzhang said that they had to build railroads. So, and from 1874 to 1888, Japan, the railroad network went from 1,000th of the UK to a quarter, and that's when China started. So. And then the second topic is the shipping company. The shipping company is it still exists today. It's the China merchants. The China merchants. The route was mostly in the Yangtze River and also from Shanghai to Beijing. So before the founding of the China merchants, it was actually a triopoly. It was Jardine, Swire, and Russell, an American company. So two British companies, one American company, Russell, and then And then, and then Li Hongzhang, he wanted to build a modern navy. So when he realized he wanted to build a modern navy, it's important to get into the shipping business. And also because why, like, it's all the profits go to the foreigners. They should play a game too. They should be part of the action too. And so he got this guy, his friend's son, Sheng Xuanhuai, to create this China Merchants Company. And then right in the beginning, they lost a lot of money because it's a government company. It's national. And so they got this other guy called Zheng Guanying. Zheng Guanying was also from Zhongshan. He would then become the intellectual mentor of Sun Yat-sen. He was Zheng Guanyin and another guy called Tang Tingshu. They were both actually Zheng Guanyin was a buyer for Swire, and Tang Tingshu was a buyer for Jardine. So they both learned because they're from Zhuhai and also from Zhongshan. Zhuhai was part of Zhongshan at the time. They went to Macau and then Hong Kong really early on and studied and also learned the trade. And so they ran this company, which is basically, it's actually exactly similar to the state-owned enterprises of today, like the ICBCs, the Shougang and all those companies, which is the officials monitor, but it's private capital. So the money comes from private sources, is run by these semi-official, semi-private individuals like Zheng, like Sheng, like these guys. And in the beginning, they would be quite profitable because they actually gave all the Swire and Russell and Jardine actually cut their prices, try to run China Merchants out of business. But then, obviously, China can do whatever they want in terms of, so all the goods, official goods, transportation from Shanghai to Beijing were all given to China Merchants. That's why China Merchants could then earn a profit. And then Russell, because of the price war, actually went under, and China Merchants actually bought back, bought Russell and all the distressed assets. So that was the first case of a Chinese enterprise buying a foreign company. And so and then another one. It's in 1879 they created the first telegraph company. The first one's from Dagu, which is where the cannons are facing the sea, and Tianjin. And so the first thing is actually for military use. And then they built it all the way to Kowloon and all that. And then there's a coal mine, Kaiping we call, and then they asked the guy I just mentioned, Tang Tingshu, to build the coal mine. So and then in 1890 they built a steel manufacturing company down in Wuhan. So you could see that why it succeeded or why it failed in this modernization period is that versus the Meiji Restoration, the Meiji Reformation, they were like, okay, let's do all of this. Build railroads, change the whole education system, build factories, and then support private capital. But in the Chinese modernization period, it's more like, gosh, we have to do this. And then they realize, oh, we have to do that. Oh, we have to do that. So it's very passive and not very thorough. And also it's something to study for today's Chinese development model as well. And that is, I always say, name one actually respectable, profitable Chinese private company. Then you realize most of the companies in H-shares index are all state-owned enterprises. And state-owned enterprises, there's one thing, that is the Chinese government will never allow like a class of rich merchants who are not part of the political establishment. And that's why a lot of the cases when the private capital, when they become very profitable, the official monitoring then came in. And obviously, and then obviously corruption, everything skyrocketed. It's like China Resources, right? They figure out now that 93% of the China Resources, what company? The cement company of China Resources, 93% of all the electricity source is not up to open bidding. So we've got stuff like this. So history never changes. It always repeats itself. But I think in this case, that's why it's difficult. It's first the Chinese model versus Japanese model in the 1860s, or even in the post-1970 era, is actually creating successful private enterprises. I think in the 1860s, the Japanese did it right off the bat. Like they're going to support the Mitsubishis, so on and so forth. Or after 1949, they're supporting supporting like Honda or Toyota or Sony. And I think that's why, or like in Korea, it's with Samsung, and then so in China, it never really happened. And also, once you have the officials involved, there's a study, the China merchants and also the telegraph company from 1884 to 1911, of the 27-year period, collectively, they xiaojing. So it's like they gave 3.5 million taels of silver to the central government for occasions such as the Empress Dowager's 60th birthday, so on and so forth. So 3.5 million, 3.5 million taels of silver, that is about 60% of the total income of that period. So literally, these companies cannot be efficient, right? So